may be seated.
Well, let me add a welcome as well to you, and let me start with an apology this morning for those of you who were here last week. I was actually in Camden last week, but I told Caleb, hey, tease a little bit what we're going to cover this morning, and so he mentioned, hey, listen, we got some big things ahead of us, and some things might look a little bit different, and a handful of you reached out to multiple people on staff and said, okay, what staff person's leaving? Nobody's leaving that I'm aware of. But we do have a lot of stuff that we want to talk about this morning, all right? Hey, I want to give another apology, and let me throw it out and tease it this way. When I was in 7th grade, played on our school's basketball team, and we had laid an absolute egg the night before in a game, particularly our older team. And so Coach McDowell, when we come to practice the next day, worst practice I've ever been a part of. It was awful. I mean, he ran us, and when we got tired, he ran us more. Not a pleasant word came out of his mouth the whole time. And about 3/4 of the way through practice, two of the guys, the older guys on the kind of the A team, were walking out of the gym. And so he said, "Where are you going?" And they said, "We're out." And he said, "If you leave this gym, you're not coming back." And they left the gym, and they didn't come back. And the next day at practice, under each of the behind the backcourt of each of the goals, he had taped just a piece of paper, and he had, on a marker, had written on the agenda for practice. Never did this before. And towards the end, it said cake and cream, and then shooting. Well, he was almost unapproachable that day. Nobody wanted to talk with him. It was kind of like, oh my goodness, what's he going to do today? And we're thinking, okay, he's not only going to run us, he's teasing us with cake and cream. He's going to kill us, and he's called it cake and cream. So we get to that point, and you can see multiple guys are talking to each other during practice. What's going on? I don't know. So we get to that point in practice, and he gathers us right around the kind of the stage area and the curtains of the stage part back, and the cheerleaders were up there, and there was cake and ice cream. I mean, who does this at basketball practice? So we all go up there, and he says, y'all enjoy yourself. We did, and then we just shot. And he said, practice is done. We never talked about this. I mean, he never mentioned it, but it was kind of his way of owning up to the debacle that was the day before. It was his way of kind of saying, like, look, probably shouldn't have, I was just doing my job, but I probably did some things shouldn't have done. Sometimes it's just good to own up. Hey, I shouldn't have. So let me own up to something from us in church leadership here at Christ Community Church, staff and elders. Sometimes we don't communicate with you as well as we should. We communicate with each other a lot. Staff meetings, there's a lot of stuff that comes out, and sometimes that never gets to you until we've made decisions. And that's just, we need to do something a little bit different. Now, that's what I'll come to today, because we as a local church have I think it's an exciting but a really big decision that we're going to need to make. So let me walk through that. In the scale of big decisions, it wasn't as big as, I think the biggest decision that's ever been made by church leadership, we have a record of it, and it's in Acts 15. Don't worry about turning there. But the decision that they had to make was, hey, we're reaching a whole bunch of new people, but these are people that are not like us. Should we lay upon these new followers of Jesus the burden of the Jewish faith that all of us have walked through? Talking about the leaders at the time. Should they become Jewish? Jesus was Jewish. Jesus carried on a lot of this stuff. Should we make them become Jewish in order to become Christians? And so they have this discussion. I'm not going to talk about the decision that they made. I'm going to talk about how they made the decision. And how they made the decision is they gathered together and they celebrated what God was doing. Hey, look at it. They told story after story. They were high-fiving. It was exciting. And then they talked about, okay, but this presents some obstacles. This presents we're going to have some conversations. Then they talked about the possibilities. Okay, we could do it this way. We could do it that way. And they talked back and forth about the possibilities, the options. And they probably got a little heated at times. They might have had to take a time out, and we'll come back in a minute, and we'll talk about this some more. They prayed, and they made a decision. And I want you to see how they made the decision. Acts chapter 15, verse 22. Then it seemed good to the apostles and the elders with the whole church to, I'm not going to talk about what they made the decision on. Is that a little frustrating? It just seemed good. Like, I want God to thunder down an answer. Write it in the clouds, have some prophet speak up and says, thus says the Lord. That's not what happened. They got together, they used logic, they used their own experience, they prayed, they relied upon the nudgings of the Holy Spirit, and they made a decision. And if you think I'm making a big deal out of two phrases, two words, seemed good, they wrote letters to the churches in the areas. All the churches that they were talking about, they wrote letters and copies of those letters, and they sent them out to the church. We have a copy of the letter. And here's what it says. Acts 15, verse 28. For it, there's the two words again. It seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these essentials. And then they give the answer. Seemed good. It just kind of seemed good. Let me kind of paraphrase this for you. Here's what they did. We looked at what God was doing. We prayed. We talked about it among the church. And then we just did what seemed best. We just took what we thought was the best option. I honestly think that's a good this is a good pattern. Because most of the decisions that we have to make as church leadership, not just us, churches all across, most of the decisions we make, God's not writing us a letter about. Some of those decisions are real clear. But most of them are like, hey, we're just going to talk about it and we're going to do what's best. So that's what I want to do this morning. And let me address just a couple things real quick. We are an elder-led church. Let me explain that. Some of us come from faith traditions that are denominationally led. Not all denominations are denominationally led. Some denominations make decisions and hand them to the churches and say, carry these out. Some of you come from faith traditions that are very much like that. We are not that. Sometimes it makes us a lot more free and we can act quick on things. Sometimes it's a little bit of a disadvantage because we don't have a group of governing people that are over us to kind of make some policy stuff, all right? We're not a denominational church. Some of you come from faith traditions that are congregational. And what I mean by that is congregations vote on decisions. So we're going to make a decision on, hey, do we hire this person? Let's vote. We're also not congregational. We are elder-led. There are 7 elders. It is not easy to become one. And you, as a church body, function in a great role in helping us with determining elders. But elders speak on behalf of people. If you have an issue, check out one of the elders. You can go to our website. You can find out how to get in contact with them. Let them know. Because elders represent you as we make decisions. So, but what we function best as elders when we know the heart of people, and we want to get that today. All right, we need your input. So here's what we're going to do. I want to talk about what God's doing among us. I want to talk about some obstacles that presents. I want to talk about some opportunities that are right before us, and then I'm going to beg for your input. All right. If this is your first Sunday, you've been here once before, and you're kind of feeling around as CCC, you're going to feel, oh my goodness, are we in a church meeting today? This is not a church meeting. This is, I need to let you know as a church body, here's some things, please respond back to us today. And you as a visitor or as a guest you're going to get a good vision of what the guts of CCC look like. Here's what's going on, and here's how we function. All right, so let's start with where we see God moving. What he's done, all the glory and the honor to the Son. This is things that God has done. We start every staff meeting on Monday mornings with this question, hey, what was a win? And so we share among staff, we share some stories that we hear from you. We share just things that we see, what's God doing, what are the wins? You might not have that, so let me share some wins with you this morning of things that God does. One of the very, very visible things that you see around us, even if you don't pull into the back, is just buildings that are being built around us. We're expanding on the kids ministry area. We're expanding the staff and the staff the staff office. But they're just buildings. And you could say, Mark, it's like walls and paint. and a roof over the top. You are absolutely right. But what we're creating and what has happened is that these become spaces like the one you're sitting in where people experience the Lord, where people open God's Word together, and where students get to gather together and be challenged and encouraged. They're environments and spaces of what we're creating. Super excited about that. Life groups. Life groups is how in a church that is the size of ours, you connect with people. Sitting in rows is great, sitting in circles is better, and we do that in life groups. There are 550 plus people that have been in life groups this past year. Super excited because of the people needs that get met in life groups. I think about missions. I love what God does through your heart as you respond to mission needs. Sometimes that's funding. Hey, we have a special request for money to be sent to or whatever, and you are outstanding with what you do with that. Sometimes it's a special drive that we do. I think of Feed My Starving Children that we do in Thanksgiving, over the Thanksgiving season, and what you do to help our city participate in that. It's amazing. This whole room becomes a food packing center. Incredible. I think of the ways that we got a team that's going to Guatemala at expense to themselves, and God will do some amazing work in them and through them. I love the fact that one of the dads of one of our high school students missed the opportunity over spring break to be a part of a roofing project that we did, but he really wanted to be a part. And so our student ministry is doing another roof in the first week of June. He's driving that. He's spearheading that. He'll lead that. Why? Because he wants his son to be a part and his son's friends to be a part of serving other people. Life After Loss is a ministry that began because one person in our church had a nudging from the Lord to do something to help provide a group of people that support each other in suffering and deep, deep loss. One of our staff people who's involved in that as well sent this to me this week. Here's one of the wins from Life After Loss. There are bitter, angry, grief-stricken people from 2 years ago who are joyful, finding meaning, and helping others in their grief journey. Awesome. What God is doing through that. Adding more services. You know, we added service pre-COVID. We dropped a bunch of services after COVID. We've gradually added services back. I can jokingly say to you, hey, if you can figure out when we meet, please come gather with us. All right? But even like Easter this year, so 2 weeks before Easter, I came to you and I said, I think we need to add a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening service for Easter. And you were champions with that. And what you did to make it so that more people could come on Sunday morning. All right? The ripple effect is the capital campaign, and what God did in stirring your heart and what you've done in responding. You committed to $1.1 million to be given in a short period of time over 3 years. You've already given $285,000 to make this stuff happen and to help fund the church plant in Camden. Baptisms. Love baptisms. I love baptisms because you love baptisms, and you celebrate so well. At 86 baptisms last year, and within the last 12 months, and you have partied on all of those. And each of those has a story that's attached to it. One of the young women that got baptized had been tracking with us online. And her first Sunday in person with us was the Sunday morning she got baptized. She continues to be with us. I love the fact that we have children who are baptized their baptisms nudge their parents and the growth of their parents in faith as well. We planted a church. God planted a church in Camden. And this morning, 8 minutes ago, they began meeting again, and there are 40 plus people, and that number is growing, who are coming to experience what Jesus is in our lives. I was there last week, and I talked with a couple from Camden who began coming there, and the reason why they started coming is because they had a relationship with Michael and Jill Thomas, who they know, and they had quit coming to church. And so they're experiencing God's grace in a new way again. CCC Kids, 320 students, the varieties of things, more volunteers, parent assistants who have been gathering, and they come from, well, I'll serve once a quarter, and now they say, hey, I'd like to be more regular. Can I serve every month? Well, yeah, we'll probably let you do that. All right? 320 students with everything from a 5K run that they did. They put it on for the first time a couple weeks ago, driven by one man who volunteered and said, dude, I'll mark out the course. I'll be a part. I'll help sure that it runs smoothly. Again, they raised $4,000 with that. For summer camp for 320 students, they had 55 spots. It filled up online in 17 minutes. Let me tell you a cool story about that. So because it filled up so quick, people got put on a wait list. And a couple of weeks ago, one of the students who had signed up was no longer able to go and had to pull out, which then freed a space for a middle school guy. So BJ and Emerson reached out to the parents, hey, your son can now go. And the father of this middle school young man said, hey, can you tell me, did the person who backed out, was it because of finances? Because if it's because of finances, I'll be glad to pay for their way. Do you recognize this? That's not just generosity of money. That would also have bumped their son out of being able to go. What God does through people is remarkable. There's a lot of personal stories. Can I just throw one more out to you? I've been real blessed, and about this time last year, there was a young woman who was here, single. Her relationship with Jesus was, we'll just call it oppositional, is the kindest way that I could describe it. But she was really inquisitive, and God had been doing a numerous, like little things to just show her. Little things to lead her, little things to guide her. And she ends up over a period of months, just more questions, more looking at Scripture. She gives her life to Jesus. And it was like out of the pages of the book of Acts. It was, wow. It will sit well with me till my last breath. But she has another young woman that they share an apartment together, who is inquisitive as well about her relationship with the Lord. And a couple weeks ago, I met with them after a service, and the roommate had these questions and all these things, and it's just seemingly to her like God is doing things to get my attention. God is doing things. And I said, what do you think he's saying? And she said, I don't know. And I said, why don't you do this? Why don't you get a Bible? I gave her one of our Bibles. Said, take the Bible, one chapter. Just start at Mark chapter 1, one chapter through the Gospel of Mark in 16 days, and just read it and ask yourself, what is God teaching you? So what's interesting is that her and her housemate, they bought her own Bible, because she wanted her own Bible, and they went to a coffee shop and started reading the Gospel of Mark, and they read the Gospel of Mark that afternoon. God's doing things. It's just God is just doing things. And if you're saying you're bragging about CCC, I am not bragging about CCC, although I love you. God is just remarkable. With that comes some obstacles. All right, we'll call them growth pains. You can call them stretch marks if you want. It's just kind of weird for a man to say that, but these are just like when you grow, there's just stuff that comes with it. So let me throw some things that comes with growing like this. We have roughly 1,600 adults, teenagers and up, who call Christ Community Church their church home. It's a guesstimate. It's an educated guess. So ballpark 1,600 adults. We have about 300 people, just under 300 people, who serve on volunteer teams, who are a part of what makes life groups happen, who are a part of what makes all of this happen. That is 19%. God bless the 19%. Because that is what makes all of this just come about. And there's every single Sunday we have needs, and we go into some kind of a scramble mode. Somebody that's in a kids ministry can't show up. Or what about the parking team, tech team? We spread our worship ministry very, very thin, et cetera, et cetera. We have just a lot of needs. We would love to see 19% to grow to 30%, to just be healthier. That would add 180 more volunteers. That then makes what our ministry team leaders, you can take the caps off now, and the things that can happen. And that's healthy. We have an increased cost of ministry. More people just cost more money, right? In a variety of different ways. Yeah, the electricity and all that kind of stuff kind of remains the same, but sometimes we have to add staff. Sometimes, it just costs more money because we're doing more coffee. Sometimes it costs more money because when we subsidize and we help out people in going on trips, 320 students, or Anchored when we do our family retreat, more people just cost more money. This is not we're about to shut the doors, but let me just throw this up. We have about 53% of people who call them Christ Community Church, our faith home, who have given so far this year. Now, some people just wait till the end of the year and give it all. I get all that. Let's talk about giving compared to expenses. Well, I'll just compare last year to this year. Last year, for the first 5 months, January through May, giving was lagging behind expenses by $83,000. We're not hugely concerned about that because of the pattern of the way people give. We tend up making that up at the end. This year, giving lags expenses about $108,000. Right? Now, I would love for us never to lag. Again, I'm not deeply worried, but healthy is what I'm healthy, if more of us. Now, I want you to hear this. Just those numbers right there, the giving of 2024, that doesn't even count the ripple effect. You're giving more this year than last year. But there's more people. All right? Come join us. All right? Let's talk about attendance and seating, and this will be the last chart that I put up. Because sometimes you're just interested in, okay, how many people come to Christ Community Church? In the fall of 2022, fall of every year jumps. Okay, school's starting up, people are excited about getting back into things. The fall of 22 is when we went back to 3 services. And we just quickly jumped up to 1,100 people. Fall of 23, last year, we jumped to 1,200 people. All right, we don't know what the fall of 24 is going to look like. The best indicator of the fall is the spring. So let me just make this comment. In the spring of 23, we averaged 1,160 people. In the spring of 24, this year, we've averaged 1,400, all right, and 30 people. That's just more. We've maxed out in services. It's Memorial Day weekend, but the last couple of weeks, 9:30, you're on top of each other. Now, personally, I love it, but I've got about 40 feet to roam up here. And you're sitting next to each other, and for new people, it's just, One more cost, obstacle. We have required a lot of flexibility from you. Right, like Easter, we required flexibility. Easter's in 2 weeks. By the way, we're going to add a Saturday service. That requires a lot of flexibility, and you have been champions at accepting flexibility. Some of you don't like change, and I feel like I would have to apologize to you all the time because we're changing constantly. I put together a document that has 3 options that I see before us coming up, and I'm going to share those with you in a second. But with each one of those options, I put the strengths and what's it going to cost us. And on all 3 of those options, I wrote these words: can our people handle this? I don't know the answer to that. So let me lay out for you some options. One of our elders is Paul Sorrells. Paul Sorrells and I have had multiple conversations just over the years. And he has said this to me. He has said this in elders' meetings over and over, and I just nod in agreement. He has said this: I've always wanted to be a part of a church where God's movement is so visibly evident. I've been involved in a number of churches where God's movement has been evident, but this is a different animal. And I just feel like years ago God said, put your seatbelt on, let's go. And I haven't been able to loosen it up yet. And there's just a lot of stuff going on. We have to answer some questions. Will we continue, Christ Community Church, Will we continue to move forward, or are we content to sit still? Now, the way to ask that question is, what am I willing to do? What are we willing to do to reach more people? When I say that, I know that whole reach more people, there are some of us that say, what, do you just want a big church? How big enough is for you? You know, how big would Christ Community Church have to get to be big enough for you? Let me answer that by looking at the heart of Jesus. Mark chapter 1, verse 45. This is chapter 1. This is at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Here's what happens. Jesus could no longer publicly enter a city, but stayed out in unpopulated areas, and they were coming to him from everywhere. When Jesus came back to Capernaum a few days later, it was heard that he was at home. And many were gathered together, so that there was no longer space, not even the door, and he was speaking the word to them. I put this in bold in my notes. Jesus was wildly popular early on. Like he would have filled this place long before, right? Wildly popular. So where did his heart go? Well, that's enough. It didn't. Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, 38. Now catch this, and I want you to see that groups of people are labeled with two different labels here. All right, here it is. Seeing the crowds, there's one. He felt compassion for them because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. The crowds are the people that were coming. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest, there's the second one, is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, plead with the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Where's the harvest? It's out in the field. Here's why I say this, and here's why I think this is important for us to look at the heart of Jesus. Because Jesus saw the field. Jesus was interested in the field, not just the crowd. And if you were to ask me, well, Mark, when is CCC big enough? I don't care if it's CCC. When's the kingdom of Jesus big enough? When there's nobody left in the field. And because every one of you, myself included, we're in the field at some point. And Jesus said, I want you in the crowd. I want you here. How do we reach people? How do we continue to reach people? For Christ Community Church, we recognize that we reach people by you building relationships, you having friends, you serving people, inviting them to come with you. And this gathering, okay, our worship gathering is the biggest entry point for most people into the faith family. Well, how do you have entry points when there's just not enough room? All right, so I want to share with you what we deem as our best options. You might have a better idea, and we want to hear it. And then we're going to need to hear from all of you. All right? Can I give you one more obstacle to having a lot of people? Is that we tend to feel like when somebody like me stands up and says something to you, hey, we need, most of us hear, oh, he's talking to somebody else. Hey, we need, and you're thinking, I hope they heard that. We think that it would be easier for Michael at Camden to get 20 people together to serve than it is for us. You know why? Because when you approach 40 people in Camden and say, hey, we need, everybody there recognizes, well, if I don't show up, what are we going to do? And most of us here feel like, oh, this is for somebody else. We need your input and we need your help. Here are our options. All right. 3 options that we think, how do we lighten the crowd without losing people? One option, which we're just not going to use, is, hey, don't come as much. Bad option. Hey, you know, those of you from A through L, you come on first and third Sundays of the month. Those of you, bad option. So here's what we think are the 3 best options, but there might be another one out there. Option 808. Option 808 is we don't change our schedule. We encourage more people to go to the 808 service. Okay? For this to work, about 150 to 200 people would need to vacate 9:30 and 11 and go to 808. And I'm not talking go once, I went. I'm talking about owning 808 as your service, as if 8:08 was the only time period that we met. Now, if you can't come, one morning at 8:08, it's not like you can't come back, but it's saying 150, 200 people would shift and make 8:08 the service. This is the easiest option. We don't have to do a ton. We just move people. One downside of that is that we suspect this is like a duct tape solution, meaning a year from now, we're probably going to be having the same conversation. All right? That's option 808. Option Saturday is, hey, let's add a service time that's not Sunday morning. Let's make it Saturday evening. So many of you came on Saturday evening the day before Easter. That seemed to work well. We don't know if that will work on an ongoing basis. To do that, we would make Saturday evening a full service, meaning full kids ministry. Now, to do that, we recognize we have to sensitively navigate what does that do to staffing, we'll figure that out, and we'll be sensitive with that, all right? It shapes the service that we would do on a Saturday evening because we don't have really any of the constraints that we have on a Sunday morning where there's time. So we can make the service could be a little bit longer. What we would do if we do this is we would add on the front end of the service, kids stay in here. At a point in the service, we would dismiss kids. What that allows is parents, you can bring your kids in with you for a part of the worship service, and they learn to worship with you. All right, so there's that benefit. It's not a young adult service. Oh, so you're making this a kid service. No, this is the way CCC operated until we opened this building. Kids would be there on the front end, and we would dismiss kids, and we would carry on with the morning. Now, for this to work, 150 to 200 people would need to shift to Saturday evening, making that primarily their service. Now listen, if you're out of town for a Saturday but that's your service and I'm not allowed to come on Sunday. No. But we're just saying you make that your service. Current volunteer teams don't serve on Saturday evening. All right? The Saturday evening group owns that time slot. That group is who fills all of the volunteer needs, coffee bar, greeters, kids ministry. All of that falls upon the group of people that call Saturday evening their service. All right? Then the third option, similar to that, is what we're calling Operation CCC 333. All right? That would be Sunday afternoon at 3:33. And you're asking, why do you call it 3:33? Well, why do we call 808 808? Because you remember it. And CCC 333, say that 4 times real quick. All right? It's the same principle, but we just make it Sunday afternoon. It just makes it a little bit easier, maybe if you have younger children, etc. Now, again, for that to work, 150 to 200 people need to kind of move and say, that'll be my faith body on Sunday afternoon. Regardless of which of these options happens, 150 to 250 people are going to need to say, this is what I'll do. All right, let me put up we've got a website. Here's a QR code you can attach to it. Don't worry about getting the QR code. When you leave today, we're also going to give you just a business card that has the website address and a QR code. And we deeply want your input on this. All right? Part of us said, we were thinking, don't let people leave without making a decision because we won't get a decision from you. This is too big of a decision for you as a family to make sitting in a seat. Talk about it, pray about it, and then we're going to ask you, let us know by the middle of the week. And if you can't, we want you to be honest. We want all of you to respond. And here's the questions that we're going to ask you in that, so you need to be thinking ahead of time. Some of these are easy. What's your family size? How many people are you speaking for? Because if one person responds, but it represents, 2 parents and 2 teenagers, what's your family size? Do you have other ideas? All right? And there are other ideas. All right? There's one other idea we didn't present because we don't think we're ready for it yet. Are there other ideas that you have on how do we take care of this? Which do you think is the best option? Be honest. Which do you think is the best option of these 3? or your own, all right, would you go to the service that you recommend? If you say option 808 is the best option, would you go to that? And just be honest, because some of you are going to say, I think that's the best option, but I'm just not going to it. Okay, let us know that. It's anonymous. We're not going to be, all right? So just let us know. Do you currently serve on a ministry team here? Because if you go to the 9:30 service and you say, I think the CCC 333 is the best option, you're probably not serving here anymore because we're going to ask you to serve at CCC 333. Do you currently serve? And then the last question is, would you serve at the service that you're recommending? Hey, I'll go to it, but I'm probably not going to serve because we need people to go and we also need people to serve. Make sense? Great. Please take advantage of letting us know from you. Let me close with this. This past Easter, we had another young woman who came for the first time to Christ Community Church. And she said this, she was terrified. I get it. You go to a new place, first time, you don't know what to expect. She was terrified. I mean, I come here all the time. Sometimes I'm terrified. I come on a Sunday morning. Right? She was terrified. But when she walked in, she has since let us know, I just felt like I was at home. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a win. That is a big thing that we want people, when they step inside the doors, even before they get inside the building, they feel like they're at home. And she has continued to come. She volunteers on our kids' ministry, I mean, almost weekly. And she was baptized this last time that we did baptisms, which I think is just amazing. You know why that happened? Because ministry teams took it serious that we want to make people feel welcomed and at home, and because you took it serious that somebody's going to need a place to sit. I just think that there are more people out in the field, and we're not done yet. We want to hear from you. And please let us hear from you. All right? Let me pray. Lord Jesus, I'm grateful for your heart. You saw crowds. I mean, your crowds didn't disappear. They were there, but your heart was for the field also. I thank you that we have this unique opportunity with crowds gathered, and at the same time, the field is still out there. So lead us, guide us. I pray that our church